I'm Haley Perot, and this is Northwest Newsweek. Federal Conservative leader Pierre Pvd was in the Fort Frances area on Monday and Tuesday, appearing at a rally and making stops at a pair of forestry companies around Emo. He's continuing to pledge to axe the carbon tax and also met with locals to hear what they want from the federal government. Justin Hardy reports.
Let's bring it home!
Federal Conservative leader Pierre Pvd kicked off his Northern Ontario tour this week in the western part of this region. Following a quick stop in Barwick, Pvd made his way to the Fort Frances Legion for a rally and meet and greet. He says that he's hearing from people in the region that life is no longer affordable.
Yeah, I was just over at a lumber mill and listening to the concerns of people who can't afford to pay for gas, heat, and groceries after 9 years of Trudeau and the NDP hiking carbon taxes and income taxes and inflation. Life is not affordable. Work doesn't pay, and the government is trying to ban people's hunting rifles. None of it makes sense.
During the rally, Pvd brought out his comprehensive plan that promises to reduce the cost of living, reform taxation through a dollar-for-dollar tax fairness policy, and reduce red tape on permits for new mining projects and road construction. He also promised to combat crime with tougher bail restrictions against repeat offenders and stopping the decriminalization of illicit drugs, as well as banning safe supply sites. During the rally, he emphasized the road to the Ring of Fire as a priority the country needs.
Infrastructure, we want to start building roads again. We need to build the roads. I know our current federal government is against roads for strange environmental reasons, but obviously in rural and remote communities you need roads, trucks, and other forms of traditional transportation. That's one of the reasons why we're going to axe the carbon tax.
The day following the rally, Pvd made his way to Manitou Forest Products in Emo. He spoke to workers about reducing taxes to lower costs for companies, which he says will allow them to pay their workers bigger and more powerful paychecks. He also explained his plan to help First Nations benefit from local projects through the First Nation Resource Charge that he says is an optional arrangement that First Nations can adopt to collect 50% of the corporate tax generated from the resource projects on their land.
So if you have, whether it's a mine, a logging operation, or any other resource project on a First Nations land, then the company could pay 50% of its federal corporate tax directly to the local First Nation, allowing own source revenue. So the money would stay here rather than going to Ottawa to be devoured by the bureaucracy.
Pvd's tour will continue east throughout the week with stops in Wawa, Hearst, Kirkland Lake, and Sudbury for a fundraising event where the maximum donation is $1,725. Justin Hardy, TBT News.
3 boaters are back home safe and sound following a frightening experience on Lake Superior last Sunday. Scriber OPP Constable Matthew Foster says the boat ran aground in thick fog off an island near Rossport.
Our Provincial Communications Center received an SOS message from a boater's iPhone saying that they were in distress and they had come aground somewhere, unsure where they were.
Nipigon OPP quickly mobilized and launched their Marine unit. The Coast Guard also sent one of their vessels, and the Joint Rescue Command Center brought in a search plane to help find the damaged vessel. It was successfully located on the far side of Simpson Island, and the 3 stranded boaters were rescued without any serious injuries.
The call came in at 10, and the boaters were returned uninjured, as I mentioned, to the Rossport Marina around 4 in the afternoon yesterday. We're extremely fortunate that there were no serious injuries as a result of this, and we're extremely thankful for all the support from the other agencies that we had. I can't speak to exactly how they came there. However, I can note that yesterday was extremely foggy near the lake, and as well as the winds were really high. So,
although the rescue mission was successful, it appears an attempt was made to bring the damaged boat back to the mainland. Unfortunately, it ended up sinking not far from the rescue site. Scriber Mayor Kevin Mullins has declared a state of emergency regarding the township's wastewater treatment plant. Officials say a structural failure which allowed water to enter the digester is preventing proper wastewater treatment. The plant has 2 clarifiers, but one of them had a structural failure and the other one had a mechanical failure with the rake system. A contractor is on site, and once the area is drained and cleaned, the repairs can begin. Officials say the state of emergency is just a precautionary measure, and the issue will not affect residents or businesses' daily use of water or the sewer system. An inquest into the 2017 death of a young woman from Kingfisher Lake First Nation began this week in Thunder Bay. Nearly 20 members of Ruth Ann Queequish's family attended the first day of the proceedings, which are expected to last approximately 3 weeks. Joel Mendelson reports.
Ruth Ann Queequish was a 31-year-old diabetes patient who passed away from health complications due to a lack of insulin, despite visiting the local nursing station multiple times in the hours and days leading to her death. This discretionary inquest is taking place at the request of her family to examine the circumstances surrounding Queequish's death and for the jury to possibly make recommendations to prevent similar deaths. Queequish's brother Jordan explains that the family does not want to assign blame, but rather to fix the system.
We need to change how medical services are in the north. There's a lot of people that are hurting in the north, and I really hope there will be change in our communities. That's what I'm hoping for, and that's where our heart is at, is that other people don't have to suffer like the way my sister, what she went through.
Among the issues with the system is the gap between federal and provincial jurisdictions. Nursing stations on reserves are run provincially, whereas the physician services are federal. Seeing as Kingfisher Lake has a population of approximately 600, they only receive the services of doctors 5 days per month, with 2 of the 5 being designated for travel. Kiwetanung MPP Saul Mamakwa is from Kingfisher Lake, and he says the nurses there need more support.
Sometimes people call the nursing stations, Tylenol nursing stations, because the nurses are not given the tools and the training to be able to provide that good service, and we need to invest in those training and making sure that we have the better tools for the nurses that are up there because they work hard.
Over the next 3 weeks, approximately 20 people will testify in the inquest, including nurses, doctors, and family members. The inquest is also being translated live to OG Cree so that members of the community can follow along. Joel Mendelson, TBT News.
A gold mine in the Fort Frances area has reopened following a workplace fatality on July 24th. 45-year-old Jeffrey Woolsey of Barwick died after being struck by material while working in the open pit at the New Gold Rainy River mine. The operation was shut down by the company for an internal probe, and the Ministry of Labor was also investigating. No other equipment or site infrastructure was impacted in the fatal incident, and the mine reopened during the day shift last Saturday. New Gold officials say the thoughts of management remain with the families, friends, and colleagues who have been impacted by the tragic incident, and they insist that the health, safety, and well-being of their employees is their top priority. Robinson Superior Treaty Area First Nations are now gearing up for another lengthy legal process after the Supreme Court's historic ruling last Friday. It found that Canada and Ontario owe nearly 150 years of back pay to the communities for failing to increase annuity payments. But it's unclear when that money will make it to the First Nations. Vasilios Bellos reports.
A historic unanimous ruling from the Supreme Court of Canada is being celebrated by Northern Ontario First Nations, though there's still work ahead for the ones north of Lake Superior to receive that compensation. Friday's ruling found the Crown breached its treaty promise by not increasing annuity payments for Robinson Treaty Area First Nations, which have been set at $4 per person a year since 1875. The First Nations argue they're owed as much as $126 billion.
We knew it was going to be a long, arduous legal process.
Chief Wilfred King of Gull Bay says his community welcomed the news, but recognizes there's still work to be done to determine the final settlement number.
There is a 6-month negotiation process which has been articulated already by the other chiefs. It has to be an agreement, and all the lawyers and all the chiefs have to agree in terms of what would be the final settlement. And once that's all parties agree to the settlement, then we would then bring it to the membership for a ratification vote.
All the communities involved have stressed collaboration moving forward being crucial before taking the next legal steps. King says he's ready to begin that work now that the Supreme Court has made its ruling.
The report was a scathing report, and it was a condemnation on both crowns, the federal and the provincial crown, that they left the First Nations with an empty promise in terms of the treaty. We're quite fortunate that this matter has finally been resolved by the Supreme Court, and we look forward to a very positive outcome.
Vicilios Bellows, TBT News.
It's time now for a short break. When we come back, a major funding announcement for affordable housing in the north.
It's about saving affordable housing that's already in place, something that's actually one of the most cost-effective ways to make sure that we can ensure people have a safe place to live.
The region's two Liberal MPs, Patty Hajdu and Marcus Pulowski, made an $84 million funding announcement on Thursday. The money will help build or repair nearly 5,000 affordable housing units across Northern Ontario. Joel Mendelson has the details.
The District of Thunder Bay Social Services Board is receiving close to $3 million of the funding. It will go toward repairing over 2,100 units in Thunder Bay.
This is going to be really good for our region. Obviously, there's some projects already underway. It's about saving affordable housing that's already in place, something that's actually one of the most cost-effective ways to make sure that we can ensure people have a safe place to live.
Some of the other big projects on the list include $16 million for a 56-unit seniors residence in Kenora and $12 million for a 40-unit seniors residence in Dryden. MP Marcus Pulowski says these projects help make life more affordable overall for many people.
With respect to food and being able to afford the cost of living. And certainly if a good part of your income just goes to paying for your housing, it makes it that much more difficult to buy food and everything else you need in life.
Along with the funding, the DSAB will also receive benefits from the newly implemented Frequent Builder Framework. This will drastically expedite applications for the Affordable Housing Fund for builders who have proven track records of building multi-residential units. Some of the benefits include a streamlined process through intake, underwriting, and approval stages, and even possibly funding commitments for future years, which will allow the organization to better plan and predict their future projects. Hajdu explains how experienced builders are well equipped.
Because they're ready to go. They likely will have sites selected, they will have contracts and relationships with builders, and they've been in the business, so they understand how quickly how quickly they need to act to meet the need.
35 communities in Northern Ontario are receiving funding under the Affordable Housing Fund, including 27 First Nations projects. Joel Mendelson, TBT News.
The lack of forest fires in Northern Ontario is allowing the MNR to provide a lot of help out west, where huge forest fires continue to rage. Right now, Ontario has 276 personnel deployed in the western provinces. Many of those staffers are from the Northwest region, and the latest group flew up last weekend.
At this time, Ontario Fire Rangers are working in Manitoba, Alberta, and British Columbia, and we have additional personnel and resources deployed to Saskatchewan and the Northwest Territories.
The massive wildfire sweeping through Jasper National Park in Alberta has consumed about a third of the small town with it. The MNR teams consist of fire ranger crews, incident management members, and air attack officers. They've all been deployed out of our province to help the western areas at risk. Fire Information Officer Alison Bazubiak speaks more about Ontario's mutual aid sharing agreement.
All requests for resources and assistance are carefully assessed while balancing the needs here in Ontario to ensure that we remain prepared for wildland fire demands here at home. So over the course of the 2024 season, Ontario has seen consistent and widespread rainfall that has kept the fire load lower than average. So because of this relatively slow fire season that we've had so far, we have been able to provide support to our partner agencies when it's been requested.
Northstar Air presented its largest ever revenue sharing check this week to Admatung First Nation. The $1 million has been accumulated over the past 3 years, and the community is now looking at potential investment opportunities for the funds. Justin Hardy has more.
Admatung First Nation had cause for celebration this week as Northstar Air presented Chief and Council with a $1 million check. The money comes from Northstar Air's revenue sharing agreements with the 11 First Nations it partners with. The agreements see the company returning some of the revenue generated through flights to and from each reserve back into the community. Admatung has received over $2.5 million through the agreement so far, but this most recent payment was the first to hit $1 million. Northstar Air President and COO Jeff Stout says each First Nation receives varying amounts and can use the funds as they see fit.
These funds, they go a long ways. Every community treats the funds differently, but there's been examples of building housing, supporting youth-based activities, land-based activities. Not sure what Fort Hope has planned for it yet, but ultimately these funds empower social and economic growth in the community that they otherwise wouldn't potentially have access funds to.
Admatung's Chief and Council announced that they would be looking into potential investment opportunities to put the funds toward. Chief Saul Etlikin said he had a feeling the agreement would be beneficial for the community.
I thought anyways that I wasn't in council when that happened, that if we stick with the airlines through the ups and downs, one day it's going to be beneficial, and we're coming together to support the airline as much as we can from our community. So that's paid off.
In addition to revenue sharing agreements, Northstar Air's community partnerships also see the company working with each community to create new business opportunities and employment, as well as an education grant for community members who are studying aviation anywhere in Canada. Stout says the company really appreciates the communities and the partnerships they have formed.
They're amazing, and we're a lot of gratitude on the Northstar side to have a partnership like this. It enables us to do what we love to do every day, which is fly, and it's the least that we can do to show our gratitude to the community.
Since Northstar Air's inception in 2014, the company has given back over $10 million to their partner communities. Justin Hardy, TBT News.
Lac Seul First Nation is officially celebrating a federal compensation award of $234 million. The historic claim regarding 11,000 acres of flooding on their reserve lands was finalized in the springtime. The signing ceremony happened on Kijik Bay Island. Chief Clifford Bull was joined by elders and the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations. The flooding took place nearly a century ago, with members saying the suffering has been generational. The settlement is being called a step towards reconciliation and a recognition of Canada's past failures to uphold treaty obligations. A lifelong advocate for survivors of Indian residential schools has passed away. Garnet Ancan received the Order of Canada for volunteer service to the cause and his efforts toward reconciliation. Former TBT reporter Jordan Milani interviewed Ancan in Sioux Lookout in 2013, when the prestigious honor was first announced. Here's a look back at that story.
He now calls the town of Sioux Lookout home and has spent a number of years doing his part to make the community a better place. Garnet Ancan was forced from his home in Lac Seul when he was just 7 years old to attend Pelican Lake Indian Residential School, where he spent the next 6 years. He says during his stay there, he, along with many others, were abused physically, emotionally, sexually, and spiritually. Since beginning his healing journey in 1990, he has concentrated on improving the relations between Aboriginals and non-Aboriginals. He says being honored with the Order of Canada wouldn't be possible without the help of a whole community.
It certainly took me off guard, completely surprised, and really honored, deeply honored by the recognition of some of the work that I, along with many others, have done.
While he believes the history of residential schools should be put in the past, he says it should also be acknowledged and discussed to create awareness. Ancan led the charge to have the federal government acknowledge and apologize to the country's residential school survivors. He's also spent the last 20 years addressing the effects and healing for those survivors, and says the only way to move forward is to create a new Canada through reconciliation.
In a sense that you always want to promote understanding, good dialogue, those kinds of good things, so that we shape the future that we want for our children and our grandchildren, so that they live in a good world.
His work in Sioux Lookout includes being elected to municipal council in 1985 and spearheading the Sioux Lookout Anti-Racism Committee, which he says has done a lot of good for the community. He views Sioux Lookout as a great example of a municipality working well with neighboring First Nation communities, and most enjoys giving his people renewed hope for the future.
It's gratifying to see people smile one more time, because we are in many ways resilient, and to know that we can heal and we can reconcile and come back and be good people again, the proud people that we were before we left our communities and our families.
Ancan received his Order of Canada insignia in 2015 from then Lieutenant Governor Elizabeth Dowdeswell. He passed away on July 25th in his hometown of Sioux Lookout. Garnet Ancan was 68 years old. Indigenous kids are learning about science and technology. We'll have that story right after this short break.
We realized that we need to help create that next generation of people within the communities who are going to help build up the strength of these technical services.
Area Indigenous students entering grade 9 and 10 were invited to a free one-day math and science summer camp this past week in Thunder Bay. The STEM camp featured groups' mentorship sessions, games, and prizes, but also a glimpse at their potential future careers. Jaden Billick has more.
Students with an interest in STEM had this opportunity to explore different interactive workstations with a number of specialized guests and learn about each field in detail. The free event was organized by the Ontario First Nations Technical Services Corporation. Communications Manager Chelsea Johnson speaks more about this unique summer camp.
So STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. And basically what we're trying to do today is to promote careers that are in those STEM fields amongst Indigenous youth, because a lot of our communities need more people in those fields to kind of like help the community long-term sustainability.
The day was full of different indoor and outdoor activities. Mining Matters was there, presenting their station full of different geodes and figuring out which ores were more conductive than the others. Meanwhile, Science North introduced the students to basic coding theory in electronics and translated that practice to a real robot, where they then battled against one another in a balloon-popping dispute. Indigenous initiatives and STEM specialist from Science North, David Bates, speaks more.
Technology, engineering, and math are kind of the backbone upon which most industries are built, right? And so if you don't have a strong understanding of how to build the robots and can code the solutions for the problems, you can't solve those problems because you don't have the skills to do so. So you gotta have people interested in all those things so that you can build cool stuff and build the future.
Johnson says organizers of this event recognize that creating the next generation of individuals who will be a backbone for the future of society is imperative. And they're really excited to be part of developing those interests now.
Our organization overall, we do help First Nations in Ontario with technical advisory services, but we have these programs for the youth because we realize that we need to help create that next generation of people within the communities who are going to help build up the strength of these technical services. So we're really excited to be a part of that.
Jaden Billick, TBT News.
Police and emergency crews responded to a scary crash north of Emo last weekend. The single vehicle collision happened on July 26th on Highway 615, just east of Highway 71 to Nestor Falls. The fuel truck lost control and rolled over. Police, EMS, and fire crews from Chapel, Emo, and La Valley attended. OPP say the driver was sent to hospital with minor injuries. Fire officials say there was a minor spillage of gasoline from the tanker. A hazmat team was brought in from Thunder Bay to oversee the scene and perform the cleanup. That's all for this edition of Northwest News Week. We'll be back next week with more of the top stories from across the Northwest.